Well,
Good.
welcome everybody to this live interview with Dr. Michel DeGraff of MIT. Today we're going to be discussing the Kreyòl revolution in Haitian education and focusing on the role of Haitian Creole and also all other types of Creole in advancing education and the historical role in the formation of people and their culture. And as you guys know, I am Francois. I'm the founder of Incultured Company. And we are doing this series called Summer Schooled, where we invite artists, activists, and academics to share their expertise with the general public and how they're reshaping our vision of our little island in the sea. So, Dr. DeGraff, could you introduce yourself, please?
Bonsoir, France.
Bonsoir,
Nou ka
bonsoir.
pale Kreyòl?
Nou ka pale Kreyòl, mais gan pil moun ki pa pale Kreyòl.
Ok, nan ap fon ti komanse an Kreyòl epi nan tire dan Anglais.
Ok.
Ok, donc m'a dit tout le monde bonjour, m'a dit nous tout honnête, pour nous cap koute yo. Merci que nous prenons temps pour nous là avec nous matin. Et puis bon, m'a une question, monsieur professeur linguistique dans MIT. Moi, c'est un dirigeant initiative MIT Haïti. Et puis moi, c'est un académicien dans l'Académie Kreyòl haïtien. Donc c'est ça. Et je suis haïtien natif natal. So my name is Michel DeGraff. I'm a professor of linguistics at MIT. I am one of the leaders of the MIT Haiti initiative, where we're promoting the use of Haitian Creole as part of active interactive pedagogy in science and math and beyond science and math as well. And I'm also a member of the Académie Kreyòl haïtien, which is the Haitian Creole Academy.
Nice. Very cool. So, just as an introduction, Dr. DeGraff, can I call you Michel? Is that okay?
Oh, mes amis français. Yeah, of course.
I just want to make sure. Okay,
So
Michel.
can I call you France?
You've been calling me for forever.
All right, okay. No info, no bon.
Okay. All right. Could you just give us an introduction into the origins of the Creole language in Haiti? How did Creole come about?
Okay, so I like to compare the history of Haitian Creole with that of French and, well, in the case of the Dominican Republic, in the of Spanish. So all languages evolve through contact with other languages. So there is, as far as I know, there is no one single language that evolves by its own. So often we think of pure languages as if so there is a pure English or pure French, but that's never the case. So languages are like species. So any language that you speak will vary according to where you are, who you speak with, etc. So in the case of so if we go back to the history of French or the history of Spanish, they emerge when speakers of Latin coming from Rome, and they went to conquer many parts of Europe. And as those speakers of Latin met other tribes, in fact, those tribes were often viewed as barbaric. So, for example, the Germanic tribes in where now is France, they were thought of as being barbaric because they didn't speak Latin. So as those folks were learning Latin, they changed Latin, and Latin, little by little, turned into what we now call the Romance languages, French, Spanish, Romanian, Portuguese, etc. And the same has been happening throughout the world, for ages. And that's also what happened to French in the Caribbean. So as the speakers of various varieties of French came to the Caribbean, came to Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Haiti, which was back then called Saint-Domingue, there was this contact among various people speaking different languages, speaking varieties of French from Marseille, French. In fact, even back then in France, there wasn't just one French. There were what the French used to call the patois. Actually, sometimes they still call them the patois. And out of this contact between French speakers and speakers of various African languages, mostly from the Niger-Congo area, from West Africa and North Africa, languages like Igbo, Fongbe, Congo, Yoruba, etc., out of this contact emerged Haitian Creole, as the speakers of African languages were learning varieties of French, and vice versa, as the French speakers themselves, as they were in contact with African speakers. Out of this dynamics of language contact emerged Haitian Creole. So I like to compare the history of Haitian Creole out of the contact of French and African languages as similar to the history of French emerging out of the contact between Latin and Germanic and Celtic languages. That's the in a nutshell, the history of the Haitian Creole.
That's a great comparison. So one of the biggest controversies surrounding Haitian Creole and Creoles and patois in general is whether or not they're quote unquote real languages. So could you you help us define what's a language versus a Creole versus a patois, and what makes a language real or not?
Right. So this is the very question that is Haitian Creole real. It's yet another symptom of the fact that the Africans were deemed. So that was during colonization. As you know, the Europeans, they had to extract wealth from the Caribbean, and they did that by using the Africans as means of labor to extract wealth from these settlements. And to do that, given that they were philosophers, they were thinkers, they were supposed to be quote unquote civilized Christians, right? So there was this paradox. How can you be civilized? How can you be Christian, but yet you're turning other human beings into beasts? And philosophers and historians have written about this. And so that's a paradox of slavery, right? So in order for them to get out of this paradox, they had to make believe or convince themselves that the Africans were lesser humans. And back in that period, language was often used as a measure of humanity. So if you're going to turn the Africans into beasts, then if the Africans start to speak like you, then of course, it would be unthinkable to admit that these Africans had language like you did. Mm-hmm. So they had to turn whatever the Africans spoke, no matter how alike it was to any variety of French. In fact, we have some documents that show that some of the Africans in the Caribbean, in Haiti, for example, in Saint-Domingue, spoke French even better than some of the quote-unquote French people who came from Europe, because in fact they had more contact with French than some of the patois speakers had in Europe. But that was a monstrosity, because how can those Africans, those beasts, how can they speak like us? So the idea is that from the very beginning, Creole languages had to be defined as lesser. They couldn't be otherwise, because if they were defined as quote-unquote normal languages, then they would have to be, the Africans have to be normal people. But back then they could not be, because they were supposed to be beasts, you see? So this is the very beginning of these negative attitudes towards Creole languages, be it in Jamaica, in Haiti, in Hawaii, in Liberia. This phenomenon is cut across the entire world. So wherever there is colonization, language has been used as a weapon to dehumanize people, as a tool for domination. You see, and that's what we still have in Haiti. People often believe that somehow Haitian Creole is lesser, is not a real language. But in fact, one could turn the argument around and say, well, maybe French itself is a lesser language, because French emerged out of the contact between prestigious Latin in contact with barbaric Celtic and Germanic languages. But yet now, we accept that French and English are normal languages, but yet they also emerge in the same sort of history between people who were dominating, who were building empires, versus those that were being conquered. You see, but now French has reached the level of respect that Creole hasn't yet. But hopefully, we're moving forward now, and there's enough evidence, both in linguistics and education, in all kinds of fields, that show that in fact, Haitian Creole is a language. It's a normal language like every other language, and it's its path, its development through history is very similar to the development of French, of English, of Mandarin, of any other language on this planet.
Yeah.
And why? Because we have the same brain. So Africans back in the 16th, 17th, 18th century had similar brains as the Europeans, although the Europeans couldn't admit it. But now we know that the human brain is roughly the same across the species. So there is no room, there is no scientific room to define Creoles, be it in Haiti or in Jamaica or in Hawaii, as lesser languages. Because if they were to be lesser, it would have to mean that the African brain is lesser than the European brain, and we know that's not true, right?
Right.
So, but now we have to get out of these attitudes and be more scientific in our approach to Haitian Creole and other Creole languages.
Right. There's this really great quote that you had in an article that says, if language is a hallmark of our humanity, and if Creole is not a language, then what are we actually saying about those Haitians who speak Creole only?
Exactly.
And I think that's really interesting because we posed that question on our Instagram page to a lot of followers, and it became a really interesting discussion as people kind of struggled with their own sense of internalized anti-Blackness as in terms of thinking of ourselves as inherently inferior, which often comes through the Haitian education system, the colonialized education system, but also it sparked an interesting discussion amongst the Dominicans on our page, as they've also heard that their form of Spanish is inferior. And it's not real Spanish. One person said that her Spanish was referred to as slave Spanish by people who spoke proper Spanish. So what exactly are we saying about our humanity when we criticize our languages, these languages that have developed so that our ancestors could actually communicate with one another and survive unsurmountable odds?
So you're absolutely right. I think I like the example of Dominican Spanish being diminished as a lesser kind of Spanish, and again, it shows the power of language in classifying and dehumanizing certain groups of people. You see, and it works. Why it works so well? Because the people who are being dehumanized, they get to believe in this myth. And the school system plays a major role in that kind of domination, because like in Haiti, and perhaps it's the same in the DR, when you go to school, you're being socialized into these hierarchies where you get to believe that if you speak, for example, only Creole, then you're lesser human than if you were to be in a home where you learn to speak French. And any Haitian will tell you that there is this very entrenched belief that if you don't speak French, you won't get the same services as someone who can speak French. And it starts from the get-go, from the school system, where if you in the classroom, your home language, your Creole, is excluded, and you're being convinced very early on that if you only speak Creole, you're a lesser human being, you're a second-class citizen. And this is the source of this, what I call this apartheid. And then this is a term that's been used by Paul Desjans, Yves Desjans, many others before me. So Haiti, although we've been independent since 1804, politically, but in terms of our culture, our intellectual stand towards our culture, we're still colonized in very deep ways because we believe that a national language is lesser, that we cannot use it to be fully human.
That's interesting, like the concept of linguistic apartheid, because in my interactions in Haiti, there are certain areas where as soon as you walk in, you get what I call the French test. They greet you in French. They try to stumble you up in conversation, and it kind of makes me wonder, what is the role of Haitian Creole in society, in our culture, if that linguistic apartheid exists continuously?
Yes, it does exist, but what gives me hope, and here I get very, very enthusiastic about it, is that if you look at the past 20, 30 years, there is a constant movement towards more acceptance of Haitian Creole. I mean, I think Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are good examples of that. So in recent studies, if you analyze the tweets and the Facebook postings coming out of Haiti, most of them are in Creole. You see,
Right.
so in a way, social media has become a major force in freeing Haitians from these mental shackles. And now, if you even if you look at recent political movements, so one example that I think stands, I think it's so clear is the movement Haiti Mouvleya. So if you look at the Facebook page where they publish materials about education, about economics, about politics, and most of it is in Creole.
Yeah.
You see, the platforms, the videos, and that to me is a very positive sign. And also another positive sign, which as a linguist, was looked at the history of changes in many languages. In this case, it's very impressive, and it gives me so much hope that this movement is being led by women. You see, there are so many women that are part of this platform, and who are posting and publishing and using social media in very, very savvy ways, and they do it all in Creole. Because usually, if you look at the way I was brought up, for example, in like me as a boy, I had more freedom to use Creole than my sister did. My sister,
Really?
as a girl, she had to be a good girl, and being a good girl meant that you couldn't use Creole because if you were to use Creole, if you're middle class girl, what they call calme, ou son motifi, ou pas capable de parler créole, parce que parler créole ou son avadel, ou son friché, ou son, they'll give you all kinds of names.
So for the non Creole speakers, just like translate really quick.
Yeah, well, it means that you kind of not really a prostitute, but you're an easy girl.
Right.
If
You're a loose woman.
Yes. So to keep your decorum, to keep your good girl status, you have to communicate with boys and other people in French.
Interesting.
But this kind of social mental shackles are disappearing because, again, this movement that I just mentioned to you, you have women who, many of them went to those Catholic schools where they were taught to despise Creole, to think of Creole as being lower, but now they are using Creole in public, in writing, you see, and that's a major step forward.
Right.
You see? And the same is true of the school system. So the school that I went to, Saint Louis de Gonzague, so for my 13 years there, I could never write a word in Creole. In fact, I remember the year when I was graduating, 1982, so I'm telling you how old I am. So in that year, right, there was this movement taking place called the Réforme d'Honneur. So we had this amazingly progressive Minister of Education, Joseph d'Honneur, and he was the first one to really say, well, we are really messing up the children. Haitian children are not learning. They're not learning because they're being taught in a language that they don't understand. So we have to change that. So with the support of UNESCO, I mean, interestingly enough, he also had the support of Duvalier. You see, he was a dictator. But interestingly, during that dictatorship, there was a movement to open up the school system, to make it more democratic. So during the dictatorship, there was a movement to democratize the school system through Creole. So, but then in the school where I went, to Gonzague, the brothers there, they were against that movement. I remember very well, we had this literature professor called Raphael Berou, who used to teach us Haitian literature, and he was telling us that this is crazy, that never ever should Haiti use Creole in the school system, because those brothers, they had the dream of turning Haiti into a Black Brittany. You see, in the history of France, there was a movement to get rid of all these patois, Breton, Occitan, Basque. The French, through the revolution, they wanted to stamp out all these patois, all these dialects that they call them the patois. And they thought of Creole in the same way. So, well, no, we'll get rid of Creole in Haiti. We'll turn Haiti into little France. You see, so they had this dream of Haiti becoming a little Bretagne, where everybody would speak French. So those brothers in '82, when they were totally against that movement. But now in Saint Louis de Gonzague, they teach the kids how to read and write in Creole. You see, from the get-go. You see, so I'm trying to show you that there is a movement towards change, towards the school system becoming more democratic and open, and actually for the kids to actually start learning for good. You see, so that gives me hope.
So you gave us this example of young ladies, proper young ladies in Haitian society not speaking Creole, but what is the dynamic between Creole versus French in shaping Haitian society overall, and also of how Haitians interact with each other and how we think of ourselves?
Well, it goes back to the same issue, right? Because again, and also when we talk about that Haitian young girl having to speak French, we're talking about the middle class, which is a very small percentage of the country.
Yeah.
We have to keep in mind that this issue of French versus Creole, and that's why in a way that's what makes it so potent, is that the percentage of quote unquote good girls, quote unquote, who can actually speak French is extremely small. And here now you get back into this issue of the mechanics of language for domination, because it's like white privilege in the US. If you have a small group that has this privilege, then it better keeps it for itself, right? So that's the dynamics basically of language in Haiti. So speaking French in the past and until today, although it's getting to be less and less, has been a marker and a tool to keep privilege. You see, it's like in the US, white privilege. In Haiti, white privilege translates as French privilege. You see, it's a tool and a marker to exclude the majority of the people from having any hope to get education and to obtain some participation in the system of power.
Right. You know, the most interesting way that I see that play out, that French privilege, is in Haitian politics. Like a lot of decrees, a lot of official documents, and to some extent, even the newspapers in Haiti, information is published in French, even though the majority of the population speaks English.
Absolutely.
And speak Creole.
Speaks Creole.
Mm-hmm. Right, and so you see this French acting as a way of limiting people's access to opportunities, access to information, and trying to control the masses. So,
absolutely.
And particularly, can you speak to its role in politics and how French and Creole, like that dynamic, influences Haitian politics?
Yeah, again, it's the very same issue as you mentioned yourself. It's exclusion, right? Because if so, the people who are sent to Parliament, to the Senate, the deputies, they are being voted by people who speak most of the time only Creole. So in Haiti, as you know, everyone speaks Creole. No, everyone speaks. It's not the majority who speaks Creole. It's everyone who speaks Creole. Only a minority speaks French. The people who vote, the deputies and the senators, most of them speak Creole only, and yet, and legally, the Constitution says very clearly since '87 that Creole is official alongside French, and it goes beyond that. It says in Article 5 that Creole is the one single language that bonds all Haitians together. So on paper, legally, Haitian Creole is the one national language, and then we have these two languages that are supposed to be official, which is French and Creole. But in practice, it's the other way around. In practice, if you look at, as you say, all the laws being published, actually, I would say all the laws. There was one famous law that was published in Creole, and that law was for the creation of the Academic Creole. And it was quite ironic that when that law was sent to the executive to be signed, President Martelly refused to sign it because it was only in Creole. Wow. You see, so but it's a totally bizarre story, but that story makes sense from a power perspective, right? Because as you mentioned, those who can speak French, then they have an easier way to convince others and to understand the way the system works, because the system is mostly written in French. And again, it excludes the majority of the people if it's only in French. So here again, you have another another tool that entrenches this apartheid system in Haiti. So what we're dealing with is really apartheid, and maybe some even of the worst kind that we had in South Africa. You know, because in South Africa it was based on race, so it was clear. Okay, we have these laws that keep away people who are not white. But in Haiti, what makes it worse is that we have a country that was built on this belief, on this principle of equality, of liberty. And 2 centuries after that, we have a system in place, as in the school system, in the legal system, in the court system, where those who speak only Creole are made lesser. They are second-class citizens, and they are lesser human beings because they don't speak French. You see, and to me, that's what makes it sadder, given the history of Haiti.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about your work with MIT and this movement that you guys are leading or are part of in bringing Kreyol into the Haitian education system, and why you thought that was something important to do for Haitian students?
Well, it was interestingly, this movement started since the 19th century. So it's a movement that started already in 1804. So there was a general in 1804, Gérin, who made a plea that the school system should be in Creole, because it was clear, even back then, back in 1804, that if you wanted to educate the majority of the population, you couldn't use French, because back then, as now, most Haitians did not speak French. And Dessalines knew it. Dessalines was clear that Creole was our national language. And in fact, if it weren't for Creole, there wouldn't be independence, right? Because Creole was one of the tools that allowed all the Africans from different linguistic groups to communicate and to create this force that got rid of the French, right? So it was clear from the very beginning, in 1804, that Creole was necessary for nation building, and for education. You see, but again, because of the way neo-colonialism works, the French was used as a tool for exclusion also from the very beginning. You see, so this movement has been in place for 2 centuries, and luckily, as I became a linguist, I got to meet other linguists, especially the late linguist Yves Dejean, who himself had been involved in the trenches, since the 50s, producing materials in Creole. He was a priest, a Catholic priest, and he and his brother, Paul Dejean, did the gospel in Creole. And it was very clear to him that if you want to educate Haitians all over Haiti, you have to use Creole. So I got to meet him, and that was actually quite. I feel very lucky, very privileged to have a chance to work with him and to meet him. He got to invite me to work with them back in the 90s in this. There was a Creole Language Bureau that was part of the Ministry of Literacy, where they were using Creole to create materials for literacy. So I got to work with them on that, and that opened up my eyes, because I came from a very theoretical standpoint. I was doing programming for computers. I was doing theoretical linguistics, but working with Yves Dejean, I got to understand how there was a huge need for scientific findings about Haitian Creole to enter into the public sphere, to enter into policy and education. And since then, I've been on that track of making sure that whatever we discover in linguistics and education can have a positive impact on the way Haitian children are being educated. And it's not just Haiti, actually. That the Haiti case might be spectacular because it's extreme. But what you see in Haiti is also true in Jamaica, in Barbados, in lesser ways, in Hawaii, in Africa, in Asia, Latin America. So it's a global issue of where you get children going to school and being taught in the language that they don't really speak, because the language is different from the home language. You see, so I have this hope that if the Haiti case can work, then it will be shown that the same should be true in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, etc. So Haiti here too can lead in terms of a revolution for education.
Right. I mean, the argument against your work is that the, standard French, standard Spanish, standard English, depending on where you are in the world, is a more globalized language. It'll give kids better access to opportunities.
Uh, yes.
It'll help them get jobs in the future. So why would you teach a Haitian child in their mother tongue if they can't go elsewhere and get employment, or if it won't allow them to be global citizens if they don't speak French? What's
Well,
the argument against that?
right, right. But what's education? Is education learning French, or is education learning all kinds of material? Not just French. And in fact, the argument can be made even sharper, right? Which is that for them to be able to learn French, they have to have good foundations in all kinds of other skills, and they cannot do that. They cannot learn French if they don't know how to read and write properly. Because the idea is that you get one chance to become a good reader. You really get one chance, and that chance is when you first enter the school system. And now the science of education, people who actually they look at how the brain works, how the brain starts to learn to read and write, and it's clear that you need to start to read and write in your native language, right? Because what you do when you learn to read and write, you connect the language that you have already in your mind. You have to connect that to symbols on the page, and so basically, if you learn to read in, say, let's say that you speak Creole, and you learn to read in French, then what you learn to do, you learn to parrot, you learn to sound out what you see on the page, because what you see on the page doesn't really match what you have in your mind. So the best way to establish strong foundations in literacy is in your native language. So, and here there are tons of research that show that.
Right. So we were discussing why it's important to actually be taught in your mother tongue, and I was wondering, how is Creole education being received in Haitian schools currently?
Well, so there is a movement that's a lot of progress. So if you look at, and this started again back in the 80s with the Réforme Bernard. So the Réforme Bernard, it started with a strong foundation in terms of the theory, but in terms of the political side of it, it was undermined from the get-go. So as I told you, even in my own school, there were teachers that were dead set against it. Saying that no way, over my dead body, I will not accept that my child be taught in Creole. And it was true even within the executive. So Guy Alexandre wrote a very interesting paper showing very clearly that even folks within the Duvalier government wanted it to fail, including Duvalier's own wife, Michel Duvalier, said, no way, I will never accept for my children to be taught in Creole, even though there was a decree, there were curricula being published to promote the use of Creole in the school system, but within the government itself, there were folks that wanted, and at the same time, there were also parents. It's like that experiment with the black dolls and the white dolls, when black children are offered two dolls, the black one and the white one, and then they prefer the white doll over the black doll.
Right.
It's a classic case where you've internalized your position in particular language, or if you don't have a particular skin color. So the parents themselves were set against it because they were convinced that without French, the kids will not succeed, which is true. But the fact is that those kids who don't speak French, the way the school system works, they will never learn. Most of them will never learn to speak French. You see, so, and this is the way the system works. The people who need the most to be taught in Creole, they want to use French as quickly as possible, but yet in doing so, they fail not only to learn French, but they also fail to learn math, to learn science, etc. Because what we know in education, in linguistics, and even if you look at the way the brain works in terms of how we learn to read and write, you need to do so in your native language. You need to build strong foundations in your native language. So even if you want your students to speak French and English and Spanish, the best chance to do that and to do that well is to give them the strongest foundations in Creole. So I always like to say that, in fact, the best friend of the francophonie in Haiti is Creolophonie. Without a strong Creolophonie, without a strong system where the kids can learn in Creole, then Haitian children most likely will never succeed as a whole to become quote unquote balanced bilingual. It's a chimera. It's a nightmare for them, because you need to have those foundations in the native language before you can learn a second language. Especially when it comes to literacy, you have to have strong literacy skills in your native language. Because if you don't use your native language, then you become a poor reader from the get-go. From the get-go, you become a shackle repet. You can read, you can sound out words without knowing what you're reading. You can just read a text, and then you cannot answer anything about the text, any questions about the text. So it's a very shallow reading.
So basically, your argument is that without a basic foundation in Creole literacy, what Haiti's producing is people who can copy paste information, but they aren't critical thinkers.
Absolutely, and we have so many examples throughout the world. I mean, I like to cite the case of Finland. So Finland is one country that was courageous enough, and in a way lucky enough because of its history, to switch its system from where kids were learning in Swedish. Although most kids in Finland, the native language is Finnish, but for most of the history, they were learning in a foreign language. But then once there was it's a complex story. But at some point, they made the switch where Finnish kids were able to go to school and learn in Finnish, and now they have one of the best systems in the world in terms of the schooling, and Finnish is used from kindergarten all the way to university. And at the same time, those kids in Finland, they also learn English, Swedish, German, and other languages. So I have linguist colleagues who they've learned most materials in Finnish, but they also speak fluent English and sometimes fluent Swedish, fluent German. You see, so there is no reason why Creole should prevent you from learning French. On the contrary, the strong foundation in Creole for Haitian kids will give them better tools to learn not only French and Spanish and English, but also to learn science and math and geography, etc. You see?
Right. Is the current Haitian government playing a role in advancing Creole education? Have they been helpful in promoting the work that you're doing?
Well, excuse me. Let me make sure that I'm connected here. I don't want to lose you. So,
okay.
Because my battery is
dying. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me connect. Okay, now I'm connected. Okay. Yes. Well, unfortunately, in Haiti, there's always been an issue with transition, right? So we had very strong support when Laurent Lamotte was prime minister, because he understood the importance of the native language education. His father was a language teacher, was a linguist, and a very fine intellectual who understood the role of language in development. So he himself, understood it very well. We also had the chance to work with Minister Maniga, Nessie Maniga, who as someone who spent lots of time in Africa, was extremely well educated and also a very smart person. He understood, and he still understands, the importance of Creole in education, because the data are there. I mean, anyone who has a scientific mind, who's a true intellectual, what you do, just look at the data. You look at what the science teaches you about language and education, and there is no doubt about this, right? That the best way to build a strong school system in Haiti and anywhere else in the world is to use the children's home language as an asset, as a tool, not as a deficit, not to exclude that. There is no doubt in science around this issue. So back then, so we had that support. In fact, we still have on paper various decrees and protocol d'accord MOUs, with beautiful language, signed with beautiful seals about how the ministry, would partner with MIT Haiti, and have MIT help with the curriculum in science and math. It's all there. We have signed decrees with beautiful signatures from Minister Maniga, from Minister Vaneur, from the Minister of Education. But then once there's a transition, and it's not just with MIT, it's also true with other institutions. The Academic Kreyòl also has beautiful accords, beautiful agreements with the Ministry of Education. But once it is in transition, all of these papers go into the drawer, and they are forgotten. You see, but at least we have that as a basis. We also have the legal basis of the Constitution that tells us that Creole is official and it's the national language. We also have the curricula. So we have all these curricula from the Ministry of Education that gives Creole an important role in the school system. In fact, according to that, and that's since the 80s, according to this curricula, the children should start learning in Creole, and then start with spoken French, and then learn written French, which makes perfect sense in terms of what we know about literacy and what we know about education in general. That you start with what you know to learn what you don't know. It's a basic principle. You see, and now we have data. We have data from there is a school in Lagonave, l'École Communautaire Matenois, where we've done research, and we've measured the learning gates of the kids who learn in Creole, and we've compared those kids with kids of the same profile in other schools, and the results there again are, as you expect, they are very clear. The kids in Matenois who learn to read and write in Creole, they become much more proficient readers and learners than the kids nearby who learn in French. Within MIT Haiti, in our initiative, we also have data from the teachers themselves who, after each workshop, we do surveys when we ask the teachers for the feedback, the experience using materials in Creole. And there too, the data that they report are very clear. When they teach in Creole, when they teach with materials in Creole, they are much better teachers. The kids learn much better. So there's a story that I like to repeat. So there's a physics teacher who tells us that when he teaches in Creole with the tools that we developed at MIT in Creole, the kids are so excited that they ask questions, they discuss, they become scientists. And to be a scientist, you have to communicate. So they communicate so well in Creole that they ask great questions. But sometimes he gets overwhelmed. And when he gets overwhelmed, guess what he does first?
He just doesn't do anything. He steps back.
No, well, he goes back to French.
Oh.
So when he gets overwhelmed by the kids' questions, he goes back to French, and then the kids quiet down. You see, that's one story that we have in writing from one of those surveys. Tells exactly why the system cannot work and why it's important to teach in Creole, because that's the only language that allows the kids to work in the scientific mode, to become active learners. Because once you introduce French, for most kids, you force them into silence, which is exactly what it tells us, that when he gets overwhelmed, when the kids ask him questions because of the Creole that they can use in the classroom, he goes back to French and the kids quiet down.
That's really interesting. So recently, I learned Spanish in a school setting, in an academic setting, and I speak Spanish well. But recently, I was asked to discuss a topic in Spanish, in business investment in Haiti or something like that, something very, very complex. And it took me so much time to prepare for that presentation that I can't even imagine going to class in physics in Spanish. I wouldn't ask anything. I would spend so much time just trying to translate things in my head from one language to another, and right. So I could even understand the concepts being presented. So it just seems like common sense that you would teach these complex subjects in someone's native tongue so that they have time to process. Because even if you are a fluent French speaker, if it's not your native language, it's always going to be a process of interpretation in your mind as you learn new topics or as you present on new subjects.
Right. Absolutely.
So another thing that I'd love to hear about is the idea of Haiti's future as a Creole literate society? What is the future that you see for us if we really can get to a place where Creole education becomes innate and every Haitian is fluent and literate in their mother tongue?
Well, I think aviation is already fluent in the mother tongue. The key issue is what will happen once Creole becomes the primary language for teaching. And also, what we need, not only we have Creole as the language for teaching in all levels and all disciplines, but what we also need to have, and that's to me, that's the current challenge, is to have quality materials in Creole in all subjects and at all levels, you see? And so it's not just using the language in the classroom, but it's also making sure that we have materials in Creole for teachers and for students. You see?
So when I said I'm probably using the word incorrectly. What I mean is every Haitian becomes literate because every Haitian does speak Creole, but not every Haitian reads and writes in Creole.
Absolutely.
Right.
So once that happens, and once the state itself starts investing in producing the text in Creole, which is exactly what the law requires. You see, the law requires that Creole be used for all state communications, and it's still not happening. So it's the law since '87, and today in 2019, we still have a situation where even most of the ministries, even the Ministry of Education, they publish mostly in French. You see, but once if we were to live in a country where all the documents were being published in Creole, all the materials in the school were in Creole, then I think the sky would be the limit because the students would really be able to perform at the highest potential. Because for now, what we have is a school system where kids from the get-go are being told to shut up. The kids are not able to express themselves freely in the native language, you see? And what does that give you? That gives you a system where most of the learning is done by rote. Even myself, even when I was back in school, most of what I studied in which was one of the best schools in Haiti, still one of the best schools in Haiti, was by rote. You see, history, physics, chemistry, mathematics. The major way of learning was rote learning, memorization. Now, with such a system in place, you can expect Haiti to grow, physicists and chemists and biologists who can innovate and discover. But there is such a major need in Haiti to create a school system where the graduates can become discoverers, can become innovators, can become mathematicians and engineers and chemists and physicists who can innovate. Look at what we're facing. We're facing a problem with the environment. We're facing problems with energy. We have all kinds of problems that require scientific innovation in Haiti. But we have all these brains that are being stunted from the very beginning because of the school system. So my point is that once we break this it's a bottleneck. Once we break this bottleneck in the school system, I think the sky is the limit because what we'll have kids who can innovate just like kids in China, kids in the US, kids in Europe, kids in Finland. You see, so once you let go of this energy, of this intellectual energy, that's a starting point. Until we get to that point, Haiti will never be able to develop. Never, never, ever. There is no way that the country will ever become a country emergent, a country on the path of development until we have a school system where the kids' creativity can be encouraged in the native language. You see, that to me, it's a boundary condition. It's the first step towards development. Of course, there are other conditions as well. It's not just a matter of language. There's also pedagogy. There's also technology. But the starting point is to allow the kids' creativity to flow through the native language.
Right. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that when we talk about this Creole versus French dynamic, the conversation always positions French as Haiti's key to globalization. And sometimes people also discuss Spanish and English as Haiti's key to globalization and development. But, a very interesting thing that I've been seeing going on, for example, with Afro-pop, is that people, they sing, they dance, they produce music and literature and things in their native tongue. and it goes global. People, you don't know what they're saying, you don't know what P Square is saying, but you love it, you like it. But
Yeah.
do you think we can have a global movement of Creole, that we can position Creole as just as important, just as relevant as some of the African countries have positioned their music and language?
Why not? Why not? Why not? I mean, think of, so recently, back in April, we have BIC, which is it's a singer, poet, rapper, come to MIT, and he took part in 5 classes at MIT. He gave 2 concerts, one concert in a Haitian restaurant and another concert at MIT, and all of his songs are in Creole, but yet, he was able to connect with so many different groups of students and faculty and the larger public through Creole. As you say, I mean, Afropop is Afropop. It's a global phenomenon, although it's rooted in African languages. So I don't see why not with Haitian Creole. So I think, our language, our culture, these are assets. These are what define us as Haitians. The reasons why we don't see them as assets is just due to a history of colonization and slavery. So in a way, we still suffer from mental slavery. So Bob Marley said it well. It's only us that can break those mental chains.
Right.
And once we do that, then Creole will not be for us a burden. It will be part of identity and part of an asset that we can use not only in the school system, but in our culture. And if you look at Haitian music, Haitian Carnival, all of it is in Creole anyway, right? And if you look at the influence of Haitian compas in the Caribbean, in Martinique and Guadeloupe, even back in Africa, so Coupe Cloué is a phenomenon in the Congo, in West Africa. There are Africans in Africa who know about Coupe Cloué, about his songs, and Coupe Cloué doesn't sing in anything else but Creole.
Right. I found out recently that the last dictator in Angola, he controlled the music and the radio waves, and so the only thing Angolans could listen to was Haitian compas. That was the only music that he allowed to come in, and so they took Haitian compas and they turned it into kizomba. They just put their own spin on it and they turned it into kizomba. Kizomba's gone global. Nobody knows what those songs are saying, but we love them. And then, my husband and I lived in Panama, and in Panamanians have a saying, like, it's not a Panamanian party till the Haitian music played. Like, they love Tabu Combo. They don't understand a word of it, but I have never been to a Panamanian party or carnival without Tabu Combo playing. Nobody knows what Tabu Combo is.
That's a good example.
Right.
So you have very good examples of that. I mean, think of Zouk, of Cassaz and Malavoie.
Exactly.
You see, those are, I think, global phenomena, and they are rooted in Creole languages. So, of course, yeah.
Exactly. Well, this has been such a pleasure. I'm going to continue, of course, keeping up with your work and your tweets and all the other ways that you bring Haitian Creole to the mainstream dialogue and conversation and the education system. I don't know if you have any last thoughts that you want to share with the people, or if a website or something you can share if they want more information.
Yes. So basically, people should go to my to the MIT Haiti website, which is haiti.mit.edu, or they could go to my own website, which is mit.edu/DeGraff, my last name. And then they'll get to see lots of documentation, lots of projects going on, and they'll get to read articles in English, in French, in Creole, and there'll be an article in Spanish about the work. I'm lucky enough to work with colleagues, very dear colleagues in Puerto Rico. Dan Walicek was helping translate one of my articles in, actually it's the article that I wrote with Glenda Stump, an MIT colleague, about the MIT Haiti initiative. Mm-hmm. That article will soon be published in Spanish. So And basically, for Haitians listening to this live Facebook, uh, they can also go and look at this appeal. So we've launched an appeal to gather educators who can produce materials in Creole or already have Creole materials, uh, for them to share those materials on this platform that we're creating. So we're creating this platform that we launch in September, and this platform will be like a venue for a konbit, for a huge konbit, where we want teachers to come and share and use uh, materials in Creole in all subjects at all levels. Of course, because of it's MIT, we started with science and math, so we'll have a core already available in science and math in Creole. But we want to gather, and we've already received materials for literacy, for literature, uh, and we want to also get materials about education, about the language. Uh, and the template will be that we want materials that will help teachers to apply the ministry's curricula. So the ministry's curricula, although they give Creole a major role, but yet we still have a major gap, which is in many fields, especially as you go up the grades, there is a lack of Creole material. So we're trying to help compensate for that gap, to fill the gap, you see? So that would be my last word, to invite all people listening, looking at this video, to go to the website and see how they can contribute. Because eventually, the only way we'll succeed is to have a movement to create materials on a major scale where any teacher or every teacher can share or produce Creole materials in their own expertise, even if it's whatever expertise it is, physics, geography, social sciences, anything at all. If it's in Creole, send it to us, and we'll make sure that it will be feedback, because we want also not only to use Creole, but also to use techniques of active learning, where students are not just memorizing, the students can be engaged in building their own knowledge, what we call active learning. So we want those materials to fit that pedagogical envelope of interaction, where you're learning by engaging in activities.
Right. So just taking a step back, we got several questions about people who are of Haitian descent, or who are just interested in Creole in general, about where they can learn Creole themselves now as adults. Do you have any suggestions?
So to learn Creole, so in Boston, where I am, there is the Creole Institute of UMass Boston, FIU in Miami, that's Florida International University. They also have a Creole program. Now, if you want to get, if you want to buy books, there are a variety of material that you can order online. So there is for people who speak English, there is a book called Parole Lacaille, which is a book by my colleague Fouina Léger. As far as I can tell, it's one of the best books to introduce Creole to English speakers. It's pretty thick, lots of materials, and it also comes with CDs. So that will be very helpful. At Duke University, for those of you in that area, there's my colleague Jacques Pierre, also teaches Creole at Duke. And again, you can go to the Duke website, look up Jacques Pierre, Haiti Lab at Duke University. And I think Jacques also teaches online for students in that area, beyond just Duke. What else? But the best way to learn is to go to Haiti, is to go to Haiti, immerse yourself in the culture, in the language, and then you'll learn Creole.
Awesome. Well, Michel, this has been a pleasure. I learned a lot from you as usual. Every time we speak, I learn something new. And there's some books on your shelves that I've been eyeing to go get.
To come and visit.
Right. So thank you so much.
These are not online.
Okay, it's cool. I can come to your office.
anytime for us. But it was great to chat, and I'm sorry that there were those tech issues.
Cool.
But I think it was a good discussion, and let's do it again. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye now.
Okay, bye bye.